and welcome back to another episode of Across the Board, a show all about sustainability and board gaming. I'm your host, Jona, and today I'm going to be speaking with LudoFact Manufacturing, based in Germany.
My name is Frank Jäger. I'm working for LudoFact in Germany. We are a factory producing card games and board games and puzzles. Our output is kind of high. We produce up to 80,000 units per day.
Oh, wow.
My job is in sales. I'm in the industry now for 25 years, so I have a bit of experience.
Yeah.
I'm usually taking care of bigger projects of publishers that need a helping hand and a bit of a guide in the industry or in the projects, not limited to production, but generally, of course, that is what I'm supposed to do.
So I first heard about LudoFact when I was researching fair trade practices in the board gaming industry because I came across their video about how a board game is made. And I was so impressed on how nicely lit the work environment was to see that there were actual locals in Germany making the board games there. And I don't know, it just looked like a really wonderful environment, and it made me happy to know my board games were being made that way. And then I also learned how sustainable they are. For example, when it comes to green energy, LudoFact is not messing around.
Well, yes, we are using 100% green energy. As I said, in 1995, we started our own company called Vento Ludens. By the way, again, Latin, ludere, to play, and vento is the wind.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, we're very traditional. We're in southern Germany, very traditional. So we started our own company. We actually plan, build, and maintain wind and solar power plants. The size, we can supply a city of the size of Topeka in Kansas with 100,000 people with our clean energy. That's the amount of energy that we produce.
Wow.
About 2/3 of the energy that we would use for our factory is produced on our factory on the roof. Just before some regulations, we cannot use it. We have to sell it to the power supplier. We have to buy back energy.
Oh,
it
gosh.
makes no sense, but this is a couple of regulations that's also 20 years old. So,
Right.
but yes, we produce
But
a lot
essentially, you're making it.
yes. We make a lot of clean energy. That's why I can say we probably have, as a corporation, the lowest CO2 footprint in the whole industry because we produce a surplus of energy.
Where did this initiative stem from? Is this from the owner? Is an environmentalist?
Our boss, our owner, Horst Walz, he was always very much an environmentalist. So that's a tongue twister.
Yeah.
An environmentalist. So the first thing he did when he bought this company and had a little money to spare, I think he bought a water power plant in a small village close by, which we don't have anymore. We sold it. We then invested in wind energy, but that was really done early in the lifetime of LudoFact, where we weren't really rich. So he basically had to turn over every penny that he invested, but he still did.
Wow. That is so
conviction.
Cool. That is awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, we're really proud of that. I must admit that everybody in the whole company is very proud of that fact, and we will not tire to tell you about it.
In addition to all this renewable energy that LudoFact is making, they're also FFC certified, and they pride themselves on using responsibly sourced materials for their board games.
The biggest thing, or the most important thing, is having recycled material wherever we can. If you take a game in your hand, you will find a lot of gray board.
Yes.
Like the box. Even if it's not gray but white inside, it's still the same material inside, and that's recycling board. So we're already doing a lot of these things. It's a habit in the industry because it's just the natural material that you use for cartons, game boxes, game boards, punch boards. The gray board is usually recycling material. 95% is the most that you can normally do.
Okay.
Because for recycling, you need to introduce a few fresh fibers.
Okay.
That's usually done by post-consumer waste most of the time. Fresh fibers going into the waste material, the recycling material, usually enhances the quality of the board so much that you don't need extra fibers. But 95% is what most of the factories claim that they have as recycling. If we don't use recycling material, it should be from sustainable sources. That goes without saying. It's very easy for me to say that because there is no forestry in Germany that is not sustainable. All our wood is from sustainable sources. Everything we have is basically FSC certified, even if it's not certified, because the supplier will just not change their ways because we didn't request FSC certification. It will still be the same material.
Oh, wow.
So we now covered punch boards, game boards, boxes, inserts, cardboard inserts, and all wooden pieces.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's already a big step.
So it's all FFC.
It is all FSC if we want it to be. Not all of our wood suppliers are FSC certified. So if we use those, we cannot certify the game. At the same time, their production methods are still sustainable. There is no other forestry.
So I've been a little confused about FFC. Sometimes FFC paper is put in a board game, but that's different than a board game having the FFC logo showing that it's FFC certified. I needed a little help in understanding all this, so Frank explains. Now, I'm curious, with using so much FFC product, why don't I see more board games that have that logo on?
It costs more.
Because it costs more. And you were explaining about like all that paperwork. Is it primarily because of like tracing? You want to have paper tracing all the way, and a lot of people don't bother with that, so then they don't have that FFC logo.
Yeah, that is pretty much it. As I said, the production is always the same. The factory doesn't change their ways. It's everything that comes out of the factory is basically or potentially FSC certifiable. But to do that, the factory, let's start with a manufacturer of wood, so a forest. They cut down the trees, they send it to the factory to make paper, now the paper mill. Now they have to certify that a certain batch of wood was cut in this forest at this certain date, maybe even with a time, I really don't know. I have never seen that part of the paperwork. And they have to certify this by signature and stamps and whatever. And this document goes with a batch of wood to the paper mill. Now, the paper mill has to certify the paper that comes out of the paper machine that was done by exactly that batch of wood. Another certification is done. Then it goes to the wholesaler or their warehouse. So they have to always make sure that they know which pallets belong to that batch of paper. Until it goes to the printer. The printer has to do the same thing again. Then it comes to us, and we cannot mix their board or their sheets with anything else. We have to make sure that this is exactly the batch of paper that comes from that particular batch of wood. Because you are a German manufacturer and you're based in Europe, what fundamental practices do you feel that are already in place because of the location of your manufacturer that kind of puts you on track to being more eco-friendly than maybe other manufacturers in other parts of the world? Wow. Well, we're in the EU, so it's not really Germany. It's the whole EU has lots of regulations.
Okay.
And the EU itself is becoming more and more environmentally conscious. So we're in a big society. I don't know if you ever have been to Europe, but if I can go by car from Ireland to Greece without any border, crossing a dozen countries.
Gotcha.
So we don't have this distinction anymore. They're German, they must be more environmentally friendly, and the Polish are not. That's just not the case. Of course, we have cultural differences, but the regulations apply to most factories equally.
Okay.
No, we're all working towards the same goal. And the Fridays for Future movement has actually accelerated everything, which we were cheering for, because that is something that we have in our agenda for a long time. We have regulations, but we don't have anything that is more strict or more severe than the United States, for example. you have the same regulations over there. It's just probably that people are more environmentally conscious over here now. The recycling industry is bigger. Trying to avoid waste, even though we don't manage most of the time, is higher. I just read an article today that Germans, in average, use 81 kilos of plastic waste per year. The United States is 130 kilos. So there is a big difference.
Yeah.
And the
Wow.
average in the EU actually is 55. So we Germans aren't really that good in that direction, but
Okay.
altogether we're trying to avoid that. The problem with plastic waste is, of course, even if you collect it, you have to sort it by
Yeah.
type of plastic to be recycled. And this is a big obstacle for any recycling.
At LudoFact, you really get a sense that there is a rhyme and a reason for the decisions that are made. Usually, if it's environmentally friendly and affordable, it's something that they will do. An example of this is how they strategically use resources that are nearby.
If we don't have to transport our items across the globe, we save a lot of CO2. So our factories, and we have more than one in Germany, we can come to that later. Our factories and our suppliers are as close as they can be. So our paper
Yeah.
factory is like 200 kilometers away. That's the closest one we can use.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Everything else is really close. We only work with local printers, so we're not shipping, let's say, rule books across Europe. We do this locally.
I wanted to ask you about the different facilities. Someone actually asked me if I ever got a chance to talk to you to ask you about the printing and how the logistics work. If you're printing in the US and then getting the board game components shipped to the US, does that reduce the environmental footprint by doing that? And was that the inspiration for that, to have localized printing?
No, there wasn't. But great, you made a very good turn to LudoFact USA, because I wanted to mention that, of course, as well.
Okay.
Thank you very much for
Great.
that. Yeah, no, the idea of starting LudoFact USA several years ago was because the market in the United States was getting so much bigger that we said it really makes no sense to produce games that are sold by the thousands and 10,000s in the United States, produce them in China or in Europe. That does not make sense.
From what I understand, currently the U.S. factory doesn't offer FFC. Is that something that you're looking into or will eventually offer?
Yes, of course, we're looking into that. The thing is, we don't have the supplier network in the United States, and it doesn't make sense for the last piece in the chain to be certified if everybody else isn't.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
we're getting there, but
Okay.
right now, what we do is
So can you explain? I'm so new to this. So do you mean that like the paper would be maybe FFC, but you wouldn't be able to get the rest of it to be, or like
well,
you just don't have the supply. There isn't the supply for FFC where you are.
yeah, well, it's not as big in the United States yet. The
Gotcha.
FSC certification. Again, you have to start with a wood, then through paper,
Okay.
and everybody in the whole chain has to be certified. Also, the printer.
Gotcha.
Um,
Okay.
and I don't think we have the network yet. That's the whole
Gotcha.
thing.
A really big environmental concern when it comes to board gaming is the amount of plastic in our board games. Whether it's this demand for plastic miniatures or the flurry of plastic bags that we get in our new board games, it just seems like it's a mainstay and we can't get rid of plastic. So I really wanted to find out what was LudoFact's approach in reducing plastic.
It's in the whole process of producing a game. Everything is. It's not a new industry. Everything we do is there for many decades and has been streamlined towards manufacturing with plastic. We will not be able to overcome this in a couple of years, but we are working on methods to counter that. For example, we are not packing or we not necessarily pack our paper, our cards in plastic anymore. We now have a machine where we pack them in a semi-transparent paper. Of course, it's not transparent, but it's thin enough that you can see through.
Okay.
Of course, it's more expensive than plastic. Everything is more expensive than plastic. Plastic has been developed for 100 years to be cheap.
Yeah.
Sorry, did I say that? To be very cheap.
Yes. Yes.
So now every pack of cards being packed in paper will cost you 5-6 cents more.
Gotcha.
But I think that's a small price to pay.
I think it is too.
The next step we can do is avoid plastic where we can.
Hmm.
We already had this example of the card packs. The next one would be shrink wrap. Not every game needs shrink wrap.
Right.
More publishers are asking for avoiding shrink wrap. So what we do is we have a stronger varnish on the box on the outside to protect it a little bit more. Of course, varnish is still a covering that is basically an artificial product and a plastic,
A plastic.
but it's
Is
much
that
thinner, but less.
is that the same as laminate? Yeah, I was referring to like the treatment of plastic on the cardboard to kind of reinforce it or make it more durable.
Yeah, we do this sometimes. Personally, I must admit that I have a couple of games at home which are laminated, and yes, it actually gives a good feel. It looks nice, but I always have a bad conscience.
Yeah, I do too. I've heard like different manufacturers say like board games won't last more than 10 years without this lamination. Do you think that's true? Maybe it depends on the gamer.
It depends. Well, we are probably not the ordinary gamer, and your audience probably isn't either.
That's true.
We are probably the guys that buy between a dozen and 10 dozen games per year. And we play them once, maybe twice, and then they sit on the shelf because we don't have time for it. So my games will probably last forever because they just don't get around to playing them all.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
If you have a user, for one of those games because it's just your favorite game, or it's something that your friends and you enjoy playing as the final game of an evening or something. Yes, it will shine. It will show wear, and probably depending on what it is, relatively soon. Cards, for example, are prone to be worn out. At the same time, well, is that such a bad thing? In the first half of the 20th century, yeah, people actually played with cards that were earmarked, and they still have fun, and they can still do it. And I don't know if I really need a new game or a new pack of cards every time that one of my cards shows a little sign of wear. Plastic bags is something that you find in every game. There is no substitute for plastic bags at this point in time.
Right.
They are cheap, they are easy, they're made in quantities that are just unimaginable, and also they're transparent. So
you can see.
For example, wooden pieces. If we have wooden pieces in a game, a quality control, a quality check is easily done with a transparent bag. If those would be paper bags, somebody would have to open those, take everything out, count them. That takes like 10 times the time for quality check with the other one. Also, Ziploc bags can just be closed and open and closed, be open and closed, be open. Try that with a paper bag.
Paper bag. That's a really good point.
So I had heard from different board game designers that they couldn't use LudoFact, although they wanted to for sustainable reasons, because of the wait time. So I wanted to talk to Frank about this issue.
We usually take care of maybe 24, maybe 30 Kickstarters a year. That's all we can handle, to be honest. Generally, Kickstarters, they have a tendency to go overboard with their bling, to have more stuff in there that is not necessarily required for the game, but enhance the game experience and also make the game more expensive, which is on Kickstarter not necessarily a bad thing. All these special items are mostly done with manual labor. That's the big difference. Manual labor in the United States or in Europe is so much more expensive than in China, that we just can't afford to do this. The industries to do these things doesn't even exist in North America or Europe because it's prohibitive in pricing. If I have a mold for a custom plastic piece, it costs about 4 to 5 times as much in Europe as in China, and in China it's already $3,000 to $5,000. So that doesn't really make sense. Some of these things we just can't do. I think it's actually, is it that Kickstarters go to China because China's better, or I think it's even a little bit like factories have developed in China to produce those Kickstarter things. Also, we are very much a different company if we compare ourselves to, for example, Panda. We are aimed for mass production. So we want the big ones like the Catans and the Ticket to Rides. If somebody comes to me and places an order for 500,000 games, I am not scared. That's basically a production of 6 days. Yeah, can do, no problem. We start at 1,000 copies normally. We don't do it now. We started 2,000 copies now because of the pandemic. Now we just cannot handle 1,000 copy print runs at this time because we are completely full and we need to optimize output. Normally we start at 1,000, and that's also what we do with Kickstarter projects. I will quote them for 1,000. We will talk about it, what we need to achieve, which funding threshold we need to achieve, different scenarios, what we will do when we reach, for example, like 300 backers, 500 backers, 1,000 backers, or what things we may add later as stretch goals or as add-ons, and at which time we do this. We offer the full package. So if somebody comes and doesn't have much experience on Kickstarter, that is not a problem. We will take them by the hand and guide them through the process. But that's also why we can only take on, let's say, 24 projects a year.
So some of the questions actually came from people that I'm friends with it's a Facebook group. It's a Greener Board Gaming group. And I told them I was going to be speaking with you from LudoFact, and if they had questions. Carlos Flores asked, what have you been hearing from publishers? Are you getting more requests for sustainable board games? What are you hearing from people?
Oh, yeah. Carlos, that's a very good question. And it actually is one of my biggest concerns these days. Yes, we do get more requirements from publishers. The only problem is that they don't want to pay more for it. So everybody wants to be green, but they just don't want to pay more money for it. And that's not how it works.
Right.
The industry has been developed into the direction where we are right now for many, many decades. So we have been fine-tuning production with plastic, mass manufacturing that uses plastic all the time. And we have to get away from that. Getting away from that means more cost.
More cost,
And
yeah.
yes, people and publishers are getting more conscious about this, but it will be a process until we reach common ground from a financial and manufacturing standpoint.
I think that's really helpful to understand. A lot of people that I've spoken to, they have a lot of aspirations, but then they kind of put the brakes on as soon as they research it. So I think just having information out there in general and making consumers, gamers, people that watch YouTube videos aware that like there is a deficit in environmental friendliness in our board gaming hobby.
The biggest change can be induced by the consumer. Let's not kid ourselves. The driving force behind all the production methods, processes, issues is the consumer. If the consumer values, let's say UV varnish, well, then publishers will ask for UV varnish from the factories. UV varnish is nothing but a layer of plastic on top of the printed sheet. So that's a polymer.
Yeah.
It's plastic. So if people like that, it's going to happen. If people want the bling from China, it will happen. The publisher will buy it because you want metal coins, you want metallized paper, plastic bits, because the wooden houses are not nice enough. You want 8 different monuments of the world in fine detail. then you will have to use plastic, and the publisher will do it.
Mm-hmm.
So the consumer is the one who can say, guys, I don't want those 8 pieces. I want a kind of cardboard standee that I can set up, like, for example, in Andor, where we have these little towers. That's all I want. Please give me 8 of those. It will be cheaper, it will be better for the environment, and it will be at least of the same playing value as the real plastic miniature.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure. If you need anything else, just let me know.
Okay. Thanks so much. All right.
Okay.
Happy holidays.
You too.
All
Thank
right.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
If anything in this video really spoke to you, please share it. And share it with your friends, share it on social media. Please help the word spread that sustainability is something that is real in our board gaming hobby and is an option for those who are looking for it.